All right, so today's video, I'm trying a different angle on the camera. Hopefully, it kind of gives you more of an idea of what size I am. Because I wanted to talk about my journey from keto, gaining about 180, 185 pounds or somewhere in there. I don't actually know from keto, 180, 85 pounds from keto. I don't actually know what final weight that I got to. I know the final weight that I had at the doctor's was 405 is where I got from keto. But after that appointment, I still had like another month or so of a rebound before I switched over to vegan. So chances are I actually got heavier than 405, but that was the final weight that I had from the doctor because I didn't have a scale that could actually weigh me. So I wanted to talk about this. So back in '99, I decided that I was lifting at that time. I had been lifting for 7-ish years. Yeah, 7 years. I started when I was 12, and I started lifting at my buddy's house, and we loved it. And I could gain unlimited strength, right? I mean, strength like you would not believe. Like, you know, people thought I was on steroids, but I hate needles, so I never went on steroids. But I was gaining strength at such an incredible rate. And so my buddy, you know, he was getting stronger too, but he was like ripped. Like we were at the mall one time and somebody's like, "Man, you're bone ripped." And I don't know what that means, but and then there was me, right? I was way stronger than he was. Way stronger than he was. But I did not have that chiseled look no matter what I did. So in '99, I'm like, I've been lifting for all these years. I have nothing to show for it. Everybody's like, "Man, you walk around like this, like," and everybody's like, "Oh, you're huge," but you just don't want all that weight on you. So in '99, I had seen in the muscle mags is like, it wasn't really called keto that at that time, but it was basically the keto diet. It wasn't Atkins. It wasn't it. It was kind of like this new hybrid in these magazines that everybody was touting. So I'm like, you know what? I'll try it. Why not? And I worked at a fish processing plant at the time, and I had unlimited access basically to salmon and all this kind of fish that you're going to eat on keto, and we also sold beef, and so I had access to this stuff, and if it was not free, it was really cheap because I would get samples. I would get my name is Ryan. This is High Carb Regenerator. Sorry, forgot to say that. But I would have access to all of this stuff for free. So I'm like, I'm going to try this. So I would live on broccoli, salmon. They said that you were allowed to have like sweet potatoes like once a week. You're allowed to have berries. You're allowed to have strawberries. You're allowed to have, all the other different, non-carbohydrate, foods. And I started going for walks. And it was working great. I was walking for an hour a day. I was doing this keto, despite the fact that my feet were killing me, because I walked, I was stood all day on my feet at work, and and then I went to high school, or vice versa, and so I was always on the move. My feet were killing me, but I wanted to dedicate an hour a day to walking. I started this in November of '99, going into the year 2000, and it was great in the beginning. I lost a ton of weight. The weight was just coming off like effortlessly. I don't know if it was walking or if it was the keto. And 1 year, not 1 year, then that next season, because I lived on the lake, we went to the beach. And I took my shirt off, and my friends are like, "What happened to you? Like you are like half the size that you used to be. Like, what happened to you?" And I said, "Oh, I just changed up my diet and I've been walking every night." I mean, I lost a ton of weight. But I did stop lifting during that time because I wanted to just dedicate my life to losing the excess body fat. I don't actually know if, I know I had to have done that because when I did start lifting again, people are like, "Wow. We didn't really believe that you lifted before, but you're really like," you could see the form of my shoulders, like traps were coming out, chest was bulging out, everything was like going crazy. Like, right, you know, it was wonderful. That's actually when I met my now ex-wife. I mean, things were going up and up and up. But I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't do this keto thing anymore. I was really struggling with everything. I couldn't sleep. My hair, like up here, was starting to come out. You know, I still kind of have them still to the bags. My liver area, which I don't know how much you can see on the screen, or you know, whatever. It was really starting to bulge out, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. And I started having these cravings like you wouldn't believe for carbohydrates. So, but I would tail it off. I would just eat more salmon or something like that, because you're allowed to eat unlimited, right? Unlimited depth on this thing, and so I ate unlimited, and then the binges came. Like, I did hold off the binges for a long time. Like, I held them off for a very long time. Like during Christmas or something, I might have some cookies, but those are really high fat. So I kind of convinced myself that was fine. You know, or like during St. Patrick's Day, because we're all Irish, you know, I would allow myself to have a little bit of carbohydrates. You know, during the holidays, I would allow myself, or like for my birthday, I would have carbs. But I couldn't hold those cravings anymore whatsoever. They started hitting really hard. To the point where, like I said, I worked at the fish place, but we had the freezer that was about the size of a normal Walmart. It was humongous. And so the owners of the place started to rent out the space to the Cheesecake Factory, who had just came to Cleveland. And I think they were going down to Columbus, or they were already there. And then Cincinnati was getting another one. And so for this whole region, because I think they're out of Chicago, so they were just kind of storing their cheesecakes here. And I started sampling these cheesecakes like you would not believe. I just convinced myself. I said, there's like 1,200 grams of fat in each slice. You know, like you're good, man. But sugar and fat together is not a very good combination. It causes a random cycle. I've talked about that in other videos. Basically, your cells get coated with fat and the sugar can't get in, and then your body just keeps releasing insulin until it does get in the cells. And during that time, you can't burn fat. So all the fat that's in your system just gets plugged into the fat stores that you've already got, you know, shoved into them. And before you know it, you are just getting fat, like really fat. Because your body's like, oh man, this dude's been starving himself, because your body wants carbohydrates. More than anything, your body converts fat and protein into carbohydrates pretty easily, but it doesn't do the reverse. It doesn't turn fat into, or carbs into fat very easily. It's a very expensive process. So if it doesn't have to do it, it does not do it. And so I'm going through this, and I'm like, I ballooned up. But it was terrible. It was under my chest. It was like a gut flap that I still have a little bit. But my liver was getting really bad. It was starting to get a fatty liver. You know, I don't know how much you can see because I can't see the screen, and everything. And it was really getting bad. So I realized that this was happening, and I really dug deep into keto again. But it wasn't working this time. It wasn't really doing the job. My liver was. I didn't realize this. I wasn't really going to the doctor. Looking back, I should have looked more into this, because when I was going to the doctor at that time, hormones were completely off. Like, this is when I started going at a couple years into this. So 2001 or 2002 is when I started going to the doctors, because I was really getting fat. Like, really, like I was a little chubby back in the 90s when I did this, but I was getting like morbidly obese on this, right? I was probably 265, 270, actually probably where I'm at right now, but I have more muscle mass on me now, because I still lifted for years after this, right? I lifted till 2010, so I still had another quite a few years of lifting. But that's when I really started noticing that the fat was accumulating. So I started going to the doctor, and I said, something's off, man. Something's really off. And I told him about the keto. He's like, you can't do the keto. You can't do, you know, This is going to kill you. You can't do it. Ironically, that same doctor was a proponent of keto towards the last few years, and he actually died because of it. So the diet that he was telling me to eat actually ended up killing him, or telling me not to eat ended up killing him. So it's kind of weird. But so he started taking my hormone levels, and everything was tanked. I mean, at one point, my testosterone was like 100 something, which, you know, it's ridiculous. Back in the 90s, you know, it was, you know, like 900, 1,000, somewhere in there. I didn't realize the sugar actually increases your hormones, not the fat. And the more fat you have, the more estrogen you have, and the more estrogen you have, the less testosterone you have. And the more fat you have, the more estrogen you have. It's just a terrible cycle. It's just a cycle that you really struggle to get out of. And that's where I was. And I should have taken notice of this, but I didn't. So once I realized I was getting really fat, I really buckled down on keto even more. Like I wouldn't even sniff a carb. Right, I wouldn't even sniff it, but it wasn't working anymore. It wasn't doing the trick like it did in '99. I tried walking again. I tried everything. I lifted and walked. I mean, I was really pounding myself into the ground trying to do all of this stuff, trying to starve yourself and do more exercise. And this is why when people come on my channel and like, you need to do that, I've done that, and that's why I'm here where I'm at. So I'm not doing that again. That's not happening. You know. So this is where I was. This is probably right around when I met Sandy, because I had been divorced and I was kind of in a bad place, but I was huge, you know, like lifting and everything. And everybody's like, damn, you're, you know, like, I mean, I was lifting like crazy. The year I got married was 2004. And that was the year that I squatted like 805. I mean, I was really getting up there in the lifting ranks, you know, like really. But I wasn't competing because I have no interest. I don't really care what Johnny Q over here is doing. I just care about what I'm doing. Maybe it's a Leo thing. I have no idea, but I just didn't care. So I didn't care enough to go compete. And, you know, the guys that I lifted with, because I lifted it, you know, I don't go to these like dainty little gyms. I like going to gyms where there's like needles in the trash because everybody's on steroids. You know, sometimes people don't even bother wearing clothes. I mean, you know, women, it's crazy gyms that I go to, right? So I was like 200-pound squats, 200 pounds of my squat under like the leader. I knew that I would have to go on roids like these people were to even compete. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm like, started thinking, maybe this really isn't like my thing, and maybe I'll back off and only squat with like 600 pounds or something like that. But the fat was still accumulating. I mean, I looked like a whale up on the altar for my wedding. I commented, I'm like, man, this land whale's marrying this like little woman here, you know, like it was ridiculous. So I started like trying to buckle down because I'm like, well, it worked for me in '99, but it's not working for me now. I met Sandy, you know, my ex, of course. And I was like trying to figure out what to do because I just wasn't, I didn't look terrible, you know, at the time. I did get real strict with it, and I backed myself off, and I was probably 235-ish or something like that, 235, big dude. Actually, that's the picture that you saw on the thumbnail. Was probably around 235. I thought I was looking pretty good. But if you notice, even in that video, my liver's distended. You know, I just thought, because when you watch the magazines or look at the magazines or whatever, all these guys got these distended guts. And I'm like, I figured, well, this is a part of it. And not even thinking that they're on growth hormone. And that's what causes most of it. That's when I met her, and everything was good, and I was doing a ton of keto still, and I actually moved out to Pennsylvania, and I was still doing the keto, but it wasn't working anymore. It wasn't working at all. And I was binging, and she loves to bake, and I was eating everything, and I was binging, and I was just, you know, my liver was done, right? My liver was begging for carbohydrates, because that's literally the function. That is the fuel source of your liver. So it was starting to beg for carbohydrates. It couldn't handle it anymore. So, you know, the keto was just absolutely destroyed. And the keto warriors, if they watch this, are going to come on here and defend keto. You're a liar. You're a liar. If you say that keto is good for you, you are either lying to everybody else or yourself or both. I don't care. It's terrible. And so the body was craving carbohydrates to the point of it didn't care what I look like. And that is really when I started gaining weight. Like, my liver was done. I would go to the doctor. My liver enzymes were way off, and I couldn't figure it out. My kidney enzymes, the results or whatever, were way off, and I couldn't figure it out. And I started binging. I couldn't control it anymore. My sleep was terrible. I started smelling like ammonia. I was throwing up stomach acid at night. And this went on for a couple of years, and then my weight kept going up and up and up. My testosterone had tanked again. I finally got it up a little bit. It tanked again. And the doctor put me on testosterone, even though he didn't want me to. I was begging this guy because I figured that would make you. Meanwhile, testosterone with a fat guy is just going to make you fatter because you already got enough fat on you. You are already aromatizing most of your testosterone into estrogen, and it's just, so he put me on it. I don't have scars anymore, but he refused to give me the shot because I think he knew that I was lifting it at the time, and I think he thought that I was just desperately trying to get the shot, so he wouldn't give it to me. But the cream that he had given me literally took all my skin off my arm, so I couldn't take that, and he wouldn't prescribe me anything else. And that was, I'm like really abbreviating things, but this basically brings me up to 2010. I was in the worst spot of my life. I went home for Christmas in 2010. And my mom was like, "What happened to you? You know, you look terrible." And I'm like, this is the first words out of her mouth. And I'm like, hello, Mom. I couldn't fit in my jeans anymore. I was wearing sweatpants everywhere. I had this brown shirt that I wore that you saw in the thumbnail and in my 405 picture. That's the only shirt that would really fit me. It was like a 3XL. I couldn't get in jeans anymore. I couldn't get in anything. And I'm like, you know what? And I started drinking too for like 6 months. It felt like longer. Anybody who was in my life at that time felt like it was longer. It was only about 6 months. Because I lost it. I started binging. I saw everything that I could eat. I just started eating. And, my liver already was just so toxic and so trashed at that point that it just couldn't take anymore. It just started storing everything that I ate. Everything that I ate was going somewhere. And that is when I started thinking, when I first met her, she was basically vegan. And I started looking into vegan, and I had to go down to Philly at the time. I had one suit that fit me. It was like a size 54 waist, and it was like a size 60 chest. It was huge, right? It was like, disgusting. And to go down to Philly. And when I came back, the train that I had stopped at was this train in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. If anybody knows Lansdale, Pennsylvania, they know that Arnold's there. And he gave me this green juice, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he's like, "Wow, you need help." And I'm like, "Yeah." And that was the journey into vegan. I'm not going to talk about that in this video because I've talked about that a lot. And I've talked about this story a lot too, but never coming in at this angle. I gained like 185 pounds because of keto. And everybody's going to be like, it's because you were binging and blah, blah. It's not. Keto, your body wants carbohydrates. Your cells, 95% or something like that, run off carbs. And when you starve yourself for 10 years, you are going to have a rebound of some kind. May not be extreme as mine, but you're going to have this. You're going to have a messed up liver. You're balding. Can't sleep anymore. Most of these dudes starve themselves and are on steroids, and that's why they get all this clout. It's terrible for you. Now this carnivore thing's coming out. I mean, this is even worse for you. And that's why I'm making this video. Like if you're on any of this stuff, and if you're in the beginning stages, once you get to the later stages, you're just going to think, oh, this is part of aging, but it's not part of aging. So I've lost about 145 pounds now, but because of how trashed my liver was, I do struggle to get the last of the weight off. Like the last time, 2016, when I lost all the weight, I was riding a lot, and I was riding on hills, and I was doing nothing but carbs. But apparently I didn't heal my liver still to that point. So it really didn't do me any good. And I'm glad that I know this now, that the liver still didn't get healed. So I'm just letting the liver heal. And once that heals, I think that the weight will just fall, the rest of the weight, whatever that ends up being. But I finally kind of pieced this all together, and I'm making this video because anybody in the early stages or later stages of keto, this is why it's happening to you, or what's going to happen to you. I don't think anybody can escape it unless they're lying about keto. If they're claiming they're on the keto thing, but most of 75% of what they eat is coming from carbs. That also reminds me, I came across this bodybuilder, Mike Menzer, and he's like, you got to eat about 75% carbs in it, and the macros, after that are whatever, because your body runs off it. And he was in great shape. So keep this in mind. Hopefully this video did you some good. That keto life, it's good in the beginning, because what happens is your body it's so toxic, but you don't care about that, right? You just care about the weight. It's so toxic that your body has to neutralize all the acids, all the toxins, so it starts pulling all the water in your muscles and everywhere it can to dilute all these toxins that you're bringing in, and you lose a ton of weight in the beginning. You can lose so much water weight in the beginning, it's not even funny, and you think it's the keto, but the reality is the reason it's happening is because you're poisoning yourself. If you stick with it long enough, you might realize that. You might not. You might just go down with the ship. But anyways, that's the video. That's my story. That's how I got where I've got. That's why when people are like, you got to starve yourself and you got to do this and you got to do that, that just doesn't work, bro. It just does not work. And I forgot to drink water before this. It just doesn't work long term. So if you want long-term solution, you're going to have to pay the piper. You might be weight you don't like for a while. Anyways. Like, subscribe. If the video would help anybody else, share it, and I'll talk to you next time.